right, we're live.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Want to welcome you to a series that we're going to try to host more frequently around kind of different topics and themes that we see people leveraging the platform for in their workflow. Gravity Sketch can be used in lots of different ways, and we're learning all these different possibilities like daily by the community. And so we've decided to bring in a few of our design consultants who work with us day in, day out to help customers onboard to the product, help inform how the product is designed and the direction that we take the product. So we'll do a bit of a roundtable, but the theme of today is really around how Gravity Sketch can be used as almost like your toolbox or a virtual studio. It isn't the pipeline, it's part of the pipeline, or it helps at various stages of the pipeline. So we have representation from footwear, automotive, and apparel. And I will just start with alphabetical order. And please introduce yourself and what you do and what you hope to share today. We'll start with Ali Moosavi. Go for it.
Hey everyone, my name's Ali Moosavi. I'm the lead automotive consultant at Gravity Sketch. Had the privilege of working with the company for about 2 years now, focusing on US based automotive companies. Prior to joining the team, I was an exterior designer at Stellantis, and since then, I've brought my experience from the automotive creative process to my role. And I'll pass it along to Red.
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Red Smith. I'm the lead footwear design consultant on the team. I've also been with Gravity Sketch for a few years now, and I've been working across all of our footwear customers, working with teams who are very early in their design or 3D design journey and Gravity Sketch journey, right the way through to our most experienced users. And I've been working with teams to not only start creative direction in Gravity Sketch, but also take it straight through the 3D pipeline through to factory communication and bringing in developers for better communication around their ideas. I'll hand it over to Jeff.
Hey team, how you doing? I'm Jeff Thrasher. Been with Gravity Sketch for probably almost about a year now, and I am the apparel design specialist for Gravity Sketch. I have about 25 years in the design industry, so I've been around from hand drawing, draping, everything traditional and conventional, and have had the awesome opportunity to jump into working with Gravity Sketch about four and a half years ago. So I've been using Gravity Sketch for about 4.5 years ago, or for 4 years, and really discovered that it is an amazing tool that helps me combine traditional, conventional with future thinking and super high fidelity clarity when presenting designs and concepts that are from our heads and everything, from nothing. It's great to meet you guys and see you guys.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we put this panel together because these are all professionals, previous professionals in industry, and now they actually service the industry and try to support industry in their learning journey of adopting new technologies and tools. So everyone on the panel has experience working in their respective fields, and now they have like this unique experience of helping people get onboarded and get into a new way of bringing products to life. One of the things that I find particularly useful here is that unlike our kind of wider non-paying community, I should call it, these folks have to deal with people that have never had any experience or maybe any exposure to this new way of working, like working directly in 3D from the onset, or at least getting 3D much earlier into the design journey. And the theme of this month for us is really around how do we use this as a flexible space, not just as a creation tool, but like as a tool to bring ideas in and out, have conversations, and fit it into various stages of the workflow. So I'm going to start off with talking a little bit about the benefits that you all have seen in kind of treating Gravity Sketch as like a place for multimedia, place for bringing in different ideas, concepts, 3D assets, things from other platforms, having discussions, and maybe even um, creating like a new type of environment for handoff. And I want to start with the footwear space because it's been really exciting to see how tech packs are being challenged with the use of this new workflow. So I'll start with you, Red. Maybe you can share some of your insights.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, before even moving into the tech pack phase, I think something that's been really interesting to see is, as I mentioned, about the sort of initial kickoff in the whole creative journey, right? If we think about design or creative direction, I've been working with teams recently kicking off their creative direction in Gravity Sketch, and Gravity Sketch has almost been this like collaborative space for them to pull in insights, mood boards, JPEGs, PNGs, and also MP4 videos to kind of pull all of their different directions and their thinking into one space. But then they're actually using the Gravity Sketch environment to build out, to sort of build on and enhance this creative direction. So, it might be like an outdoor theme, being able to take that creative direction to a next level by building out these immersive environments, and then everyone can jump in and start to brainstorm ideas together and then go off in their own kind of creative direction from there.
Can I ask a little question on that really quickly?
Yeah.
You talked initially about all those 2D assets. Like, what would be the benefit of bringing all those 2D assets into a 3D environment? Like, there's lots of different 2D platforms that you can use to kind of populate your mood boards. Like, what are you finding as the unique advantage for these teams?
I think it's that everyone might look at those 2D mood boards or images, and there might be a certain part of that image that clicks for different people in the room, right? And what we're seeing at the moment, what we're seeing now in these collaborative spaces, is that people can now circle a certain area of an image, draw a line over to like a model or a last, and start like really quickly sketching out an idea that relates from this image, and everyone else in the same space can instantly understand what they're looking at, and then build on that. So it's kind of enabling deeper conversation, and also just better understanding of each other's ideas. Whereas, if this was on a 2D collaboration app, you don't really know what everyone else is looking at, right? And you don't know how that relates to what's going on in their mind. So it's almost like people can translate what they're seeing on that 2D image straight into the 3D space.
So, just so I can kind of see if I can connect this all, do you think like the way that the users are moving in the environment kind of reinforces that? Because I guess when you're all behind a screen, you don't really know where people's eyes are or their heads are. And I do notice that when we're in VR, just seeing the headset and the controllers, sometimes like someone doing this or looking around, you can kind of feel like you get another bit of that communication layer.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you have a better connection with everyone in the room, and you're understanding where people are looking, and even just like gestures, right? Like when you're
Mm.
behind a screen, you kind of lose a lot of that, but you can see people, like you said, their head movements, also their hand movements, and maybe where they're specifically zooming in and scaling in on a certain detail. Um,
Nice.
so it really feels like the closest way of all being in that same physical space as possible without actually all being together. Um, and then,
That's
yeah,
really cool.
to your original point, we're now seeing that the same value that people are getting from those initial creative kickoffs that they're able to leverage when they go into tech packs and kind of factory communication as well. So having their 3D model that they can pull apart and scrutinize, but then be able to take a cross section, maybe do some detailed line drawings in Illustrator or something, and then bring that back into the space to kind of reinforce what they're talking about in 3D.
Cool. Ali, I'm going to come over to you.
Yeah.
The automotive workflow is much longer than the footwear workflow, and primarily because you're obviously making a vehicle that takes a lot more cooks to kind of bring to the market. Where are you seeing this kind of hybrid digital working environment and like being most leveraged or taken advantage of? Um, yeah, how are you seeing this kind of
Yeah,
manifest?
absolutely, absolutely. And I want to touch on Red's point as well about the storytelling aspect. I think we could start there, where we have teams now. We have leaders, managers, designers, clay modelers, digital modelers, engineers can come into this space, and the designer or the user of that collaboration room can walk them through a 3D storyboard. I think that's a really great way of putting it, because you're not only just going through 2D assets, but you're also going through 3D assets, and you're also seeing the progression of how that 3D asset evolved over time, and then the decisions that were made at certain points in time to kind of relate back to how the decisions were made and why they were made, right? So the benefits in the automotive industry, I would say, hugely is the collaboration aspect of it. We're starting to see a large departure from the traditional process where there was a series of handoffs that are very like siloed and cut and dry. Now those lines are being blurred. So we're having clay modelers jump in to the headset and they're digitizing their clay, or they're working with their designers a lot closer versus the traditional method of a designer maybe sketching on a 8.5 by 11, or providing Photoshop sketches to just hand off and have them execute, or tape lines and knife lines that were traditionally put on a clay model. Now we're seeing both of those parties putting on a headset, speaking about the design, problem solving in real time so that the design is better for it, right? I think that's one of the biggest things. Another thing is with engineering, in a similar vein, right? You're able to get the package very early on at the start of a program, and you could start problem solving immediately around that 3D assets versus spinning it around on a screen and just talking about it. You're actually able to get into the nitty gritty of that engineering package and start sketching immediately with the team, with the parties involved. And it makes for a very fruitful discussion, and it moves the timeline along a lot smoother, and you can get to a solution a lot quicker.
Yeah, I guess you can kind of get to the point where you load something in and you understand it at scale so quickly that you can almost think if your design is going to work with it or not, or with a few lines you can probably validate, okay, this is going to work with it with the package, or this may not work with the package.
Absolutely. And the thing is about automotive, and I think that there's a little bit of contrast here between footwear. Um, Automotive designers and just the automotive industry, the majority of the people there are 3D natives, right? So they already have a tool set. They have tools such as Alias, now more so that we're seeing a surgence of Blender and other tools that they're, bringing tools in, or data in and data out. And I think, yeah, I think having the ability to pop things in and take things out, as it's almost like, I wouldn't call it a rest stop, but it's just like a place for all of the data to kind of come together and have people speak about it, and before you actually execute it downstream.
Yeah. Jeff, I wanted to kind of build on top of that more, especially in the apparel space. There's a huge uptick in Clo, and we know those models are quite heavy. So both Red and Ali have referred to bringing package data in. I'm a little bit familiar with footwear, spent some time in automotive, so I know that you can kind of get that package data in a digestible way. But in apparel, what I've seen, and I don't have enough experience in that space yet, but like these are pretty heavy assets in 3D. So I'm sure that the image stuff is probably universal across the board. Video stuff is probably the same. But how have you found that aspect? Are you seeing some of our customers bringing in like full Clo models and like reviewing full Clo models, or is that still a bit of a tricky process?
It is a tricky process. Because of Clo, V-Stitcher, Browseware, those models are highly detailed in fabric and representing fabric folds and wrinkles. There's a lot of geometry going on with that. So what we have been recommending is taking some of those models and reducing the geometry or decimating the geometry, and then bringing it into Gravity Sketch. The other option that we've also been sharing with people, with the community, is to bring in the actual Clo model or the 3D model and make a trace it in Gravity Sketch and make a native block from that. Therefore, we can trace one side of it in mirror plane, and then the designer already will have a GS native representation of the actual fit block. So then therefore, whatever they design on one side of the mannequin or the garment, it simultaneously happens on the other side. So therefore, just a little bit of that work up front really highly increases the efficiency and effectiveness of designing in Gravity Sketch based off of the actual proportions and shape of the original block created in Clo or another 3D specific software. So that's been kind of the work that we've
Got it.
been doing.
So I guess it's not fluid yet. Obviously, there's some challenges in getting stuff in and out, but once you do get it right, it can seem like it's quite powerful. Jeff, I'm going to
Yes.
stay with you for a moment here, and just switching topics a little bit. We're going to kind of wrap this section up and get into some other takeaways. But if you can, and I always hear these great stories from you all about certain customers and breakthrough moments and how it's impacted their workflow. If you can, obviously being sensitive to some of the material that we get exposure to, can you share maybe like an aha moment or a breakthrough moment for one of the customers that we work with when they've applied this strategy of kind of using it as a kind of catch-all environment to discuss things, share things, and move things down the pipeline? And we'll follow up with Red and Ali after you.
It's a combination. When it was a combination of when we were building out that virtual studio, and we were building models in there. We had a wall built up where we were bringing in and scanning in sketches, inspiration, as what Red was kind of talking about, building out the studio. The aha moment was actually it was when we brought in the integrated web browser.
Mhm.
Then all of a sudden it was like, oh, we can work in here, we can draw in here, and we can automatically go online inside of the tool and like bring in other inspirations and everything. So it was fluid.
Was
That
this like a design
workflow.
review or what?
This this was
I'm just thinking of like a snapshot in time or one of the events that happened with one of the accounts. Was it a design review or was it just a co-working session?
this was a co-working session at one of their HQs,
Okay.
and with one of the designers, and actually two of the designers, and they both were like, "I'm not leaving Gravity Sketch. I'm not coming out of this room. This just really helped me just keep my work going." So that
That's
was an
cool.
aha moment of just those tool sets, just like of integrating design and keeping the headset on and
Yeah.
bringing in references rather than taking the headset off, you know, putting stuff into landing pad, pulling it out. That web browser was one of their like, oh shoot moments. Like,
Yeah.
it's that was one of those things about just it's just like um the workflow was like, wow,
Yeah.
this is cool.
That's cool. Yeah, we were just talking before we went live around how VR doesn't really have this kind of multi application type of mode, right? I think it will come, but right now I kind of like launch one application at a time, and that's why we developed the in-app web browser, just because there is no way to pull up a web browser while you're still in Gravity Sketch. So that's interesting to see how how these things are helping amplify the workflow, but over time, you can have like 25 different applications open maybe while you're still in your creative flow.
That would be cool.
Um, yeah, Red, over to you. Any kind of like encouraging stories or anything that kind of was a breakthrough moment for the teams that you work with using Gravity Sketch in this kind of multimedia hybrid type of way?
Yeah, there was. I mean, there's quite a few that come to mind, but one that was quite recent was I was working with a designer at one of the big footwear accounts who was working on a new project that was based off of an existing style, um, and initially we jumped into a session and they imported a 3D last and then some initial sketches, and they sort of started off just sketching around the last, and it kind of made me think, hold on, if this is an update of an existing style, why don't we utilize that work that's already been done on that existing style? And we actually went and took a 3D scan of the model, the existing shoe, imported it into the room, and lined it up with the existing last. And it was this instant like aha moment of, wow, I can import something that's already existing. I can utilize the existing shape, form, proportions, and I can really speed up my workflow because I know that I'm working to, the previous toe spring or stack height, but I can still be creative in my process. But I know that I'm kind of sticking to real world parameters or kind of limitations, right? Um, so that was like the first aha moment. There was another aha moment on that same project where the designer then finished their concept, took all of the screenshots and exported the 3D file and sent it to the factory. And then normally footwear designers will receive 3D PDFs, which they can open a 3D file, spin it on their laptop screen, but they can't really do anything with it other than maybe take screenshots and sketch over it. So we actually re-imported the factory 3D back into the collaboration room. We had it like lined up with the original Gravity Sketch file, which in itself was really amazing to see how accurate they were and how close they were. But then the designer was really trying to work out, how do I communicate like the changes I want to make to the factory now? And we just started to pull apart the 3D that came from the factory. And again, it kind of just clicked of like, I can actually now pull this apart or turn off certain layers and communicate the internal workings and those really complex elements to design that can take a lot of time to communicate through 2D. So yeah, those were a few of the aha moments on that project.
Yeah, I remember that one. That one's, if it's the same one, that was really cool. It was cool to see some of the previews as well from the designer. Ali, the auto space again. It's a bigger monster to deal with. Not to kind of discredit the footwear or apparel, but I just know there's so many moving pieces in the auto workflow. Have you seen some of these kind of wins and similar to what Red and Jeff has been witnessing with customers?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we see a lot of aha moments. They're honestly what keeps me going. But yeah, in terms of aha moments in the automotive industry, one of the largest ones that never ceases to amaze the audience is AR pass-through, one-to-one scale AR pass-through, right? So traditionally, when you're working on a project, you don't get to see a full size until much later on in the process, right? So now with Gravity Sketch, you're able to see that full size model from the very first week of your sketches. From the very first time you create a sketch in there, you're able to blow it up in full size and start analyzing it, reviewing it, and getting a feel for what the vehicle is going to be. A huge win recently at one of the Detroit-based automotive companies was they had a full-size data set that they brought into a full-size AR pass-through data set that they were able to walk around, and it's always great to see people kind of putting their head into the digital model, seeing the interior, walking around it, and that specific data set was next to the physical counterpart that was the updated version. So it saved them a lot of time, it saved them a lot of money, and they're able to iterate on that full size data set instead of investing in so much more time to update it, right? So we see that a lot in the industry, in the automotive industry, where they're also doing that for interiors as well. Typically, you have an interior buck that's kind of just set up for the hard points of the interior, and then you have that digital overlay that they're putting the design on top of, and they're able to get a real glimpse of that interior, what it's going to feel like, what the reach zones are going to be. It's I think one of the most impactful aspects of the tool in terms of automotive. Red, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, this comes from my lack of experience in the automotive industry. You mentioned about there's that power of being able to see your sketch at full scale. For in the traditional process, like if you're a designer your design gets picked, how long might it be into the process before you actually get that full scale representation of your idea?
It's a question of resources, but essentially you would have to create a digital model. So you would have to work with a digital modeler if you hadn't already created it yourself, right? And then there's engineering involved that have to make sure that it's on package. Then there has to be an armature that's built, right? So an armature is essentially like a chassis it's like a fake chassis with real tires. And then there's a blue foam that goes onto that they have to do an undercut of. And then you have a team of clay modelers, maybe 3 or 4, that will pack a full-size model. It will take them about a day or more, depending on the size of the vehicle. And then you have to get a mill. You have to have milling time, a mill slot. So that data will then go through a process of being cut down, and depending on the fidelity that they want of that mill cut, it could take a while, it could take a few days, but overall that process could be 2 to 3, maybe even a month long, depending on the resources that is. So being able to see your your digital asset in full size at, just one gesture versus spending however much that's going to be. I think that's a huge win for the automotive industry.
And Ollie, how much of that is like um, visual confirmation at scale versus like I know there's some haptics and tactility. Like my time at JLR, some of the physical models we did reference for, just understanding better curvature and the materiality of like what that surface would look and feel like. So there was a little bit of the haptic sensation that Clay gave us. So in those first few models, like how much of that is just around visual confirmation? Because like VR
Absolutely.
cannot give you the physical confirmation, right?
Right, right. That's a really good point. So, in the traditional process, even in my career, we made scale models to move around proportions, play with the graphics at a much smaller scale. That could be a fifth scale model, right? Just to get a feeling of what that vehicle is. But you won't really understand what it's going to be in full size until you get there, right? So even if the graphics and the things look good on that scale model, you have to amplify those things, right? And then typically it's a large cleanup process, right? You'd have clay modelers having to scratch the clay, repack it, steal it. You'd have to put tape lines on it. So to answer your question, a lot of it has to do with visuals up front. Later on, it's the finesse, right? You'll have that stage where you verify the design, but then there's always going to have to be the human touch to it to kind of get rid of the computerization feeling or that stiffness of the model. But yeah, that's how I would phrase that answer.
Yeah, understood. I'd like to open the floor to you guys with the question here and maybe just hear how the conversation goes. But I often, when I go and speak to customers, have to level set with them like, hey, look, we're not going to replace any of your CAD tools, nor are we going to replace your Adobe suite, nor are we really going to replace kind of any of the really specific tools for doing 3D printing or anything like this. And so they're often like, well, where does this fit and how does it fit? And I'm sure you guys have had to deal with some of this kind of helping position the customer and the user in how this kind of could work in their workflow, because I think so often like we're always looking to replace something or put something in a box. So I just wanted to open it to you all, whoever feels like they have a approach to help others think about the software, the technology, and how it sits amongst all the other tools. But also maybe like the most common tools that this integrates with as well, and how well that integrates. So yeah, I'll open the floor there. Go for it, Ali.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the great things about being a consultant is understanding that individual user's ecosystem, right? In terms of automotive, yes, there is a like legacy tool set, but there are some nuances and there's new tools that are coming into play. But we see Alias Sub D, Blender, we see Maya, we see VRED being exported to VRED, exported to Twinmotion. There's a variety of tools, right? But it's always great to consult with the individual user because everybody has their own favorite tool set or the tools that they're comfortable with. So when I do consult with them, I understand exactly how they want to approach it, and then we inject gravity. Gravity Sketch can be injected at any stage, essentially, but we make sure that if they're trying to pull in their Alias Sub D data or their Blender data, they're able to. There's decimation that comes along with that, which you're able to do in Blender or other tools. But yeah, it's a toolbox, like you said. You're able to put in other tools and export it, and it makes the handoff super easy when you want to take it downstream for visualization.
Yeah, I can jump on the back of that as well to the point around like where does Gravity Sketch fit in. I think what I love about the tool is that everyone has their different workflows even without Gravity Sketch, and I think Gravity Sketch really complements that, right? It's a very versatile tool that allows people to enter the 3D space at maybe different stages in their workflow. So depending on the designer and the way they like to work, we'll see sometimes people like to jump in with a completely blank room and they just want to express their ideas really quickly, as if they were sketching on paper, but they're sketching the 3D space. Other designers might like to ground their work in more of a reference, so like a 3D scan or a 3D model, or even just importing a 2D sketch and use Gravity Sketch to really bring that 2D idea to life and understand, even for themselves, how does this idea actually work before I start showing other people. And then other designers want to, you know, explore 3D forms really quickly and then export whatever they get to in Gravity Sketch and take it into other 3D tools like Rhino or Blender to kind of finesse it or take it to the next level. And then you've got other users that will actually get into the real fine details in Gravity Sketch as well. So I think it's kind of got a place in the workflow for a whole spectrum of people in different stages in their workflow. And I personally would just recommend, like, try as many of them as you can, because you never really know what works for you until you try it. Try not to get too much into a box. I think a lot of people, and I've seen this firsthand in a lot of instances, is people think because Gravity Sketch is 3D, they associate that with lots of other 3D software like Blender or Rhino, which is very precise, and they want to just get into the details super early, and they forget all of that like free expressive gestural stage in the design process. So yeah, I would encourage, like, try going a bit earlier in your design workflow within Gravity Sketch than you have before, and keep loose, and then you can build in the detail from there. Yeah, that's just what I've seen a lot, I would say.
Yeah, just to also add that through kind of add on to this conversation through the lens of apparel design. What I do like to kind of share with the community and customers is, for an apparel designer, Gravity Sketch has become the maker's digital tool. Like Red, just like you mentioned with Blender, it is precise. It is using the mouse and keyboard. Rather, with Gravity Sketch, the controllers are our extent, you know, are our digital extensions. So from a design apparel design point of view, we're draping fabric, you know, over a top of a mannequin, or we're taping design lines. But we're doing this. We're not pushing around a mouse or memorizing, you know, keyboard shortcuts and everything. So like what Shay was saying, we're not replacing an illustrator. We are really helping bring, you know, the ideas that we have, that a designer has in their mind, in 3D, and it keep helping them keep it in 3D, that kind of thing. So it helps, you know, as what Ollie was talking about, and Red, what you were talking about too, is validating an idea, validating ergonomics of a hem going around the body, rather than like trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to draw this front view and then back view, you know, kind of thing. We're actually really helping accelerate an idea, and accelerate an idea from the designer's head to their cross-functional team, to their friends, their teammates, their management. And we're helping them accelerate the idea. And yeah, just wanted to kind of add that little tidbit
No,
too.
that's great. I mean, all of what you all have said has just made me think, like, there's almost like this new dynamic that's happening in 3D, where it's like right now 3D is precise. Like, you literally enter millimeters, unless you're working in like sculpting software, right? You're entering in dimensions and like constraints and everything from the get-go. And there just hasn't ever been this space, especially in the digital world, where you're just kind of like pulling things around almost like you would do on paper. Like, how precise is your pencil? You know, like someone could say it's extremely precise, you know, because I know exactly what I want to sketch. And so, like, this training of the mind to just treat 3D as like another medium for exploring ideas is digital 3D, I should say, is something unique that we're starting to see. And it's a hard one for us to try to champion and pioneer, but it sounds like once people get it, they kind of, they're off to the races. And on the back of that, it wouldn't be I don't think it would be a very fruitful webinar if we didn't show some product. And so we're going to welcome Jaron to show his screen and walk through some of the features. Mainly, we're going to focus on this kind of import-export flow, but then we'll jump into layer groups and selection tools as well. And if you guys can just kind of free for all, maybe speak to, as Jaron's sharing some of the features, speak to how that has been impactful in the workflow, in various parts of the workflow, or how you've seen customers adapt to these new features in 6.2. This has been like one of the most most kind of engagement that we've ever gotten from any of our updates. So we were doing something right here, but I kind of want to hear from the specialists themselves as to like why these were such impactful parts of the user workflow, or how they had such an impact on the user workflow. So yeah, Jaren, if you don't mind sharing screen, we can pull up Gravity Sketch and start going through some of the features. Yeah, video. Sorry. Oh, okay. Cool. Well, Jaren, what are we starting with? Export presets? Cool. So yeah, who wants to chip in on this? I mean, this has been a something that wasn't necessarily a request, but an observation that we found people struggling to get stuff in and out, and wanted to make it easier for them.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Red. You're good.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I was just gonna say this. I've seen this firsthand. Has been a real game changer because Gravity Sketch for a lot of people is like the gateway into 3D. It's very intuitive tool to use, but and as a result, we're seeing a lot of people picking it up as maybe their first segue into the realm of 3D. And exports was always like where it got a little technical, right? Like trying to understand, double-sided normals, welded, or anything like that. So what we were able to do as consultants internally was break down what are the most important tools to that we're seeing people go into, and then define those presets, which just again it just makes that whole like data transfer and 3D pipeline even more seamless in and out of Gravity Sketch. So yeah, this has been a real game changer, I would say.
Yeah, I think you guys would echo that on the call as well. Grouping layers is a it was a long requested thing. In most other platforms, most other creative tools, you can always kind of nest layers and kind of keep going deeper and create like you almost create like an organization or a management system through your layers. So we finally brought that to the product, and yeah, what are some of the things that we've been observing on that front? Go for it, Ali.
Yeah, this has been a highly requested feature in automotive. As you can imagine, if you're working with a vehicle, there's so many complex parts and assemblies. Even when you're sketching, and even in the beginning stages, designers like to stay organized, and the ability to now group objects and then also group them in the layers is a great way to keep them organized. We actually had one of our users said that they cut down 150 layers to 30 groups. So that's a huge win for them because they're able to then seamlessly interact with their layers, and they're able to stay organized.
Okay.
To add on to that too, is from a apparel point of view, apparel designers, the industry right now is like such a heavy 2D ecosystem, and a lot of Adobe Illustrator. That's pretty much the go-to tool. Um, Love to teach out now, like grouping layers is like, okay, now we have within one group layer, it's like here's style one, and within style one you have the wireframe, and then you have the surface layer, trim layer, color layer, and everything all in one grouping layer, and then you can organize that and pop in the next style, and then within that style. So it's kind of almost like a seamless like workflow or seamless transition from like kind of tool sets that you've been used to for like many years working in Illustrator. Now you have that same kind of functionality or same kind of lens in Gravity Sketch. So that transition, going from 2D Illustrator, for instance, into GS has been even more understandable, and even like shorter. The gap has been a lot smaller between that.
Yeah, I mean, we're still a young company, and I knew that we needed to do this very early on, but like trying to get the resources and allocate the resources over other functionality, especially like collab was like the big contender for our time back in the day, was always a big challenge. Um, but yeah, it's great that people are utilizing it and getting value out of it. Right now, it's one layer deep. We're going to try to go deeper, like and get multi layers deep, but that's just another technical challenge that we need to master internally. We spoke a little bit about precision and other tools and what they can be used for. And for the longest, maybe it's us being a bit stubborn as a team. We've always wanted to kind of keep that fluidity, keep it creative, keep it loose, keep Gravity Sketch loose. But over time, we get pulled into these conversations around, I just need to move it by 1 millimeter. And through observations over the few years, we've seen like, all right, actually, like this doesn't mean that they're breaking that creative flow and they're not being loose because they need to move something by, you know, a set amount or a fixed amount. In fact, potentially this could amplify, you know, the creativity. And so, you know, huge learning, huge humbling moment for us on the product side. And so that's what really we started these reps on Selection Tool. And so Selection Tool has been a welcomed functionality and feature as well as the Section Tool, which I always felt was like very clinical in the way like you cut thing in half and you need to see it 2D. Why would you need to see it 2D? So I'd love to hear how we're starting to tiptoe in some of these quote unquote precision functionality into our platform. Is that taking away from the creative flow in your minds, or is that getting people back into like the little nitty gritty? Or how are we seeing people still stay loose, still stay creative while using these more precision quote unquote functionality and features, i.e. the selection tool and section cuts to kind of work in the workflow? Any learnings or observations that you've seen here would be extremely helpful.
I can jump in definitely on the cross section tool. Um, there's a really interesting point. I think what I've seen is that the selection tool has enabled people to just like validate their ideas quicker. So I don't know if it's necessarily restricting them, but it allows them to understand what they're creating quicker and then make changes to that. So um and then I guess to build on that, it's an enhancement for the communication of their ideas as well, right? Like they can now bring more people, more stakeholders, more team members into their sort of design process and hold like better conversations around what they're creating. Um, and what they can now do is have those conversations earlier before they do get stuck in like the nitty gritty and the millimeters. So yeah, that's what I've seen so far, I would say.
Is that because like all the ways of communication that are like predominant across most of the other disciplines is still two dimensions, or is it just because, or is it more of a manufacturing thing? Like, I guess especially in automotive, right? Like automotive, we didn't expect that the section tool would be such a powerful feature. Um, yeah, quite curious of like as to why this has been such a hit.
No, it's absolutely a hit. You know, when you have multiple designs, multiple packages that when you're working with an engineer or you're discussing it in your studio, like as you're seeing here on the screen, you're able to just cut right down the middle and see, you know, how things are being packaged, where the surfaces are. You're able to take the measurements, and this is a workflow that's not new to the automotive industry in the sense that VRED has, you know, the clipping plane, right? So this actually keeps people in the headset, right? Which is a great thing. And you're able to, in real time, cut it down straight down in the middle and be able to have those fruitful discussions with engineers. You're also able to do this in full size. And I think that's something that's new, right? Where you're able to cut a vehicle in half or parts of it to really analyze what's going on underneath your surface without having to actually dive your head into it. Another really useful way of that I've seen people use this is they're actually analyzing their surface, like the crown, right? If if it's too positive or too negative, they're able to make a quick section and like gun sight the surface and see like how it's traveling as they're clipping through it to be able to analyze the surface. And previously, you would have to like actually put your headset perpendicular to the surface to be able to see that. So in terms of this being a useful tool, it's extremely useful, right? In multiple different ways, especially in automotive.
I struggle to see how it'd be useful in apparel, but maybe Jeff, you've seen some interesting use cases.
No, we haven't seen any use cases in the section tool yet, but you know, the selection tool, again, like kind of making some parallels or drawing some parallels between Illustrator and Gravity Sketch, where you have a white arrow, you know, it is within a grouped section or a grouped garment. You can use the white arrow and pull apart, you know, just the sleeve or like the front panel, or you have the black arrow, which will select the whole. So again, like just really drawing some really nice parallels between 2D Illustrator and Gravity Sketch has been a really gap closer. Everything. The selection tool also for apparel design is because a lot of us, like the car or the vehicle, we're working and using the mirror plane a lot, and those really do help us, keep things organized or keep things really directly on the mirror plane, as well as when we're starting to um, build out design review rooms, we can really move objects around our apparel to design references a little more precisely instead of kind of making it a little bit off skew. We can do that too. We can pick things up and put things against the wall, for design reviews. But those tools, such as the selection tool, has helped us really kind of keep things really nicely organized in a very concise manner.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for those insights on the new product directions that we've been taking. We wanted to kind of wrap this up. I really appreciate all the time and insights, and I think it's very rare that folks get.
Um, I can kick off with the workflow side of things, and it was actually not footwear specific, which I quite liked. And what I was actually doing was with my Quest 3 was utilizing AR pass through, and I wanted to design like a bit of a sculpture that interacted with something physical in my home. And I was gonna, like, instead of going and sketching or anything like that, what I actually did was went into AR pass through and just started sketching around the physical object, and then was able to move around it, validate what it would look like from different kind of perspectives depending on where you were in the room, and then build it out in Gravity Sketch, and then 3D print it, make sure that it worked, and then I actually took it to a mold shop who has made a mold from it, and we're doing a casting. So yeah, I haven't picked up the casting, but yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be this really nice process from initial conception in AR straight through to the physical piece. So oh, and then in terms of reaching me, maybe my Instagram or LinkedIn is probably best. I don't know where it's best to share the Instagram tag, but
Is it?
cool.
Okay,
I'll
cool.
pass that along.
Awesome. Who's next?
Yeah, I'll
So,
take a stab at it here. Oh, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
dude.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so the workflow that I'm really keen on is Gravity Sketch to Twin Motion. You guys probably saw the recent YouTube video webinar that I did. I did a demo for that. And that's partly because it keeps the speed. There's a certain speed that you can achieve with Gravity Sketch, and I think that speed is continued in Twin Motion because you're able to visualize it so well, and you're able to make renderings and animations with it. And then within that process, I also interject, AI sometimes, whether that be, Viscom or Optic or some of the other ones that are out there, just to see, what the design could look like as I'm figuring out the design. I don't always have it figured out, but I do the majority of the work in Gravity Sketch. I also, go into Photoshop as well. So I'll take screenshots of my Gravity Sketch model. I can cycle it through AI. I can touch it up in Photoshop, and then bring that image back into Gravity Sketch, make the changes. And then once I'm happy with it, then I'll export it to Twinmotion and make a full-blown rendering or full-blown animation. And I think that's my preferred workflow as of right now, just because it's based around speed, but it's also really good quality. In terms of reaching me, my Instagram handle is lowpolyollie. You can hit me up with any questions. If you want to collab, hit me up. I'm always down to get into a new project. Also on LinkedIn, for the more professional folks, go ahead and hit me up on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat with you there. But yeah, with that being said, I'll pass it off to Jeff.
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to reach on LinkedIn. It's just Jeff M. Thrasher. You can find me there, and you'll see a lot of 3D a lot of 3D work. And then yeah, LinkedIn. You can also find me under the same name and everything. But yeah, I live, breathe apparel design. So and I'm from being a maker, I love the tool. So I love challenging myself 100% in Gravity Sketch to make, drape, tape, and then present. I am a huge, I'm really huge into design communication. How much more efficient can we be? How much more exciting? How much more um, attitude and everything can we bring into design communication? Especially for apparel. Again, it's like I've been in this industry for over 25 years. I've been working in 2D, pretty much that long, and it's just 3D is really freaking exciting. I've been using Clo as well longer than I have with Gravity Sketch, and so I know both. I know both the technical side, technical design side, such as Clo 3D, as well as the creative side. So, it, to me, Gravity Sketch has been kind of the nice combination of best of both worlds, of bringing in of all worlds, 2D, 3D creative workflows as well as technical design. The space that the as it is that Gravity Sketch creates has allowed me to really kind of create those presentation spaces, design communication spaces, to bring all three of those worlds, technical, creative, 2D together and everything. So I just geek out to that. So
Awesome.
yeah, I don't do anything pretty much outside of apparel, but this is what I've been loving to do for a long
That's
time.
cool. Well, thank you all for sharing. Really appreciate it. And to everyone watching, feel free to leave some comments. Let us know if this is the type of content you want us to continue to share. Obviously, we're trying to do this to better inform you all who don't have access to Red, Ollie, and Jeff on a regular basis, to better learn how to fit this into your workflow, better learn how to approach this technology and other tools that you might be using. So yeah, feel free to give us some feedback on this. Let us know, and we'll continue to do more of these if this is a hit. But thank you so much for your time. Thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting us. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Ciao,
everyone.
guys.
Bye.
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 Bye.